The great chamber fell silent as the final vote appeared on the display. 847 species voted yes. Only 3 voted no. The decision was final. Humanity would be terminated. Ambassador Maya Chun stood at the center of the vast hall, her small human frame dwarfed by the towering aliens around her. Some had multiple heads. Others floated in containment fields filled with strange liquids. A few existed only as clouds of glowing particles. All of them had just agreed that her species was too dangerous to live. The Archon speaker, a being so old that its crystalline body had turned nearly black, leaned forward. Its voice echoed through translation devices in 1,000 languages. The evidence is clear. In your brief existence, humans have committed countless acts of violence. You have poisoned your own world. You have created weapons capable of destroying entire planets. You wage war over resources, ideas, and imagined differences. The galaxy cannot risk allowing such a species to spread beyond your world. Maya's hands trembled, but she kept her voice steady. We have made mistakes. We don't deny this. But we have also created beauty. We have art, music, and literature. We have learned to work together. We have begun to change. Too little, too late, another council member said. This one resembled a massive insect with wings that shimmered like oil on water. We have seen species like yours before. They always promise change. They never deliver. The pattern is clear. You will destroy yourselves or others. We choose to end this threat now, humanely. Humanely? Maya's voice cracked. You're talking about killing 7 billion people. We will make it quick, the Archon said. 1 Earth year. You may prepare your people. Make peace with your fate. Then our fleet will arrive and administer antimatter warheads. Your planet will be sterilized, but your people will feel no pain. This is more mercy than your kind has shown to countless other species on your own world. The other delegates murmured their agreement. Some had already begun to leave. The matter settled in their minds. Humanity was a footnote now, a cautionary tale for younger species about the dangers of unchecked aggression. Maya stood alone as the chamber emptied. She thought of her daughter back on Earth, just starting university. She thought of the children playing in parks, the artists painting in studios, the scientists working in laboratories. All of them had 1 year left to live. She pressed the communication device on her wrist. This is Ambassador Chun. The vote failed. Execute Protocol Exodus. On Earth, the message arrived in the middle of the night. In a bunker buried beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Sarah Okonkwo read the encrypted message 3 times before she believed it. Then she stood and addressed the room full of scientists, engineers, and military personnel who had been waiting for this moment. They voted to end us, Sarah said quietly. We have 12 months. No one panicked. They had prepared for this possibility. For 5 years, ever since humanity had made first contact with the Galactic Concord, Earth's best minds had worked on a contingency plan. They had seen the way other species looked at humans. They'd heard the whispers about humanity's violent history. They knew this day might come. Begin Operation Dandelion, Sarah ordered. Across the planet, hidden facilities came to life. In the Australian outback, massive underground hangars opened. In the depths of the Atlantic Ocean, submarine construction bays activated. On the dark side of the moon, factories that the Concorde didn't know existed began their work. Humanity would not go quietly into extinction. They would scatter. Sarah walked through the main facility, checking on each project. In one laboratory, scientists loaded genetic material into cryogenic storage units. Every plant, every animal, every microorganism from Earth would be preserved. In another room, engineers tested experimental engines that bent space in ways that would make Concorde scientists weep with envy. Humans had reverse-engineered crashed alien vessels decades ago, a fact they had carefully hidden from their would-be executioners. How many ships? Sarah asked her chief engineer, a brilliant woman named Dr. Amira Hassan. 2,000 and counting, Amira replied. Some will carry people in suspended animation. Others carry embryos that will be grown when they reach their destinations. We've also prepared the quantum probes. Sarah nodded. The quantum probes were her idea, born from desperation and theoretical physics that most scientists thought was impossible. They would upload human consciousness into microscopic machines and fire them into deep space. If even 1% survived the journey and found a way to reconstitute themselves, humanity would live on. The Concorde is watching our orbital space, Amira said. How do we get the ships out? We don't use orbital space, Sarah replied with a grim smile. We use the wormholes. 3 months earlier, human scientists had discovered something the Concorde had missed. Their own network of faster-than-light communication devices created tiny temporary wormholes. With the right equipment, those wormholes could be widened just enough for a ship to slip through. The Concorde would never see them leave. Commander David Liu stood on the bridge of a ship that had no official name, only a designation, Vessel 0847. He looked at his crew, 20 brave souls who had volunteered to leave Earth forever. They would travel to the edge of the galaxy, find a lifeless world, and start again from nothing. They might succeed. They would probably die. But they would try. All ships report ready, his communications officer said. David took a deep breath. Somewhere above him, his sister Maya was returning from the Concorde, carrying the official death sentence for their species. Somewhere below him, in the bunker, Sarah Conquo was coordinating the greatest exodus in human history. And here, in this moment, he was about to become one of thousands of seeds cast into the cosmic wind. Open the wormhole, he ordered. Reality tore open in front of his ship, a swirling vortex of impossible colors. Through it, he could see distant stars that no human had ever visited. His ship lurched forward, engines screaming, and plunged through the gap in space behind him. One by one, other ships followed. They scattered in every direction, each heading for a different corner of the galaxy. Some would fail. Some would be lost. But some would survive. On Earth, Sarah watched the status board as ships disappeared from her sensors. Each green light that blinked out represented hundreds of lives leaving their homeworld forever. She felt tears on her cheeks but didn't wipe them away. How many made it through? She asked. 97% of the first wave, her assistant reported. The Concorde hasn't detected anything. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. They had bought themselves a chance. Not a guarantee, just a chance. But that was more than the Concorde had wanted to give them. Above Earth, Concorde monitoring stations detected nothing unusual. Their sensors showed a species preparing for extinction with surprising calm. They saw no launches, no escapes, no resistance. They had no idea that beneath their notice, humanity was vanishing into the darkness between stars. The clock continued its countdown. 11 months remained. Earth began to empty. Commander David Liu had been in space for 6 months when his ship finally found what they were looking for. The planet had no name, only coordinates. It drifted alone in the darkness between galaxies, a rogue world ejected from its solar system millions of years ago. It was cold, dead, and perfect. Begin landing procedures, David ordered. His crew of 20 worked in practiced silence. They had trained for this moment, but training was different from reality. This frozen ball of rock and ice would be their home forever. Their children would be born here. Their grandchildren would die here. Maybe, if they were lucky, their great-grandchildren would see this colony succeed. The ship touched down near what sensors suggested was a massive deposit of frozen water. David was the first to step onto the surface. His boots crunched on ice that had never known warmth. Above him, the sky showed no sun, only the faint glow of distant galaxies. "Welcome to Sanctuary," he said into his radio. The name stuck. Over the next weeks, his crew established the first structures. Automated mining equipment dug deep into the ice, searching for the minerals they would need. Nuclear reactors provided power and heat. Greenhouses were assembled using prefabricated panels. And the first Earth plants began to grow under artificial light. David kept a journal, knowing that future generations would want to understand how it all began. He wrote about the challenges and small victories. He wrote about the woman on his crew, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, who successfully delivered the colony's first child in month 8. He wrote about the day they made contact with another colony ship, Vessel 1205, which had landed on a moon orbiting a gas giant 300 light-years away. But mostly, he wrote about hope. Despite everything, despite being exiled to the edge of nothing, his people found reasons to laugh. They celebrated birthdays. They played music. They were still human. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other ships completed their journeys. Some found habitable worlds and established traditional colonies. Others, like Sanctuary, created life in the most unlikely places. A few ships failed, their crews lost to equipment malfunctions or cosmic accidents. But most survived. On Earth, Sarah Okonkwo prepared for the final phase of Operation Dandelion. The planet was nearly empty now. Most of humanity had either left on colony ships or entered suspended animation in hidden underground bunkers, scattered across the solar system. These bunkers were designed to remain undetected for centuries, their occupants sleeping until it was safe to emerge. But Sarah had one last card to play. Project Echo. "Are you certain you want to do this?" Dr. Hassan asked her. They stood in a laboratory filled with equipment that seemed impossible even by human standards. Quantum computers hummed with power. Massive electromagnetic coils lined the walls. "We need insurance," Sarah replied. "The ships might all fail. The bunkers might be discovered. But this can't be stopped once it starts." Project Echo was humanity's most desperate gamble. Using quantum entanglement and technology that Sarah barely understood herself, they could upload a human consciousness into a microscopic probe. The probe would be fired into space at nearly the speed of light. It would remain dormant until it encountered certain conditions, such as a computer system or sufficient energy sources. Then it would activate and attempt to reconstitute the consciousness inside. "We have 17,000 volunteers," Dr. Hassan said. "People who are willing to have their minds copied and fired into the universe with no guarantee they'll ever wake up." Sarah nodded. She was one of those volunteers. "Begin the upload sequence." The process took hours. Sarah lay inside a scanner that mapped every neuron in her brain, every connection, every memory. It felt like falling asleep and waking up simultaneously. When it finished, a computer held a perfect copy of her mind, compressed into quantum data. "Upload successful," a technician confirmed. "We're loading you into probe 7812. Sarah looked at the tiny cylinder that held her digital ghost. It was no bigger than a grain of rice. Inside it, another version of her existed, frozen in time, waiting for the moment it might live again. "Fire when ready," she said. Across Earth, 17,000 probes launched into space. They scattered in every direction, invisible to detection, traveling at velocities that made them nearly impossible to intercept. Some would fly for thousands of years before encountering anything. Others might never activate at all. But somewhere, somehow, a few might succeed. The calendar showed 1 week remaining. Sarah stood in the empty control room, looking at maps that showed humanity's diaspora. Red dots marked colony sites. Blue dots marked bunker locations. Green lines traced the paths of the quantum probes. Together, they formed a web spanning the entire galaxy. "We're ready," Dr. Hassan said. "All personnel have evacuated Earth. We're the last ones." Sarah took one final look at her homeworld through the monitors. Cities stood empty. Roads had no traffic. Parks were silent. Earth looked like a tomb, but Sarah knew better. Hidden beneath the surface, in bunkers too deep for Concorde sensors to detect, 300,000 humans slept in suspended animation. They would wake in 500 years, long after the Concorde forgot about humanity. "Let's go," Sarah said. "I want to be off-world when they arrive." The last transport lifted from Earth, carrying Sarah and her team. They flew to a hidden station in the asteroid belt and entered their own suspension chambers. Before Sarah closed her eyes, she sent one final message to all the scattered colonies. "This is Dr. Sarah Okonkwo speaking to all of humanity wherever you are. Today, the Concorde arrives to destroy our homeworld. They believe they are ending our story. They are wrong. We are the species that walked out of caves and built cities. We are the species that looked at the stars and decided to visit them. We are the species that refused every extinction nature threw at us. We will not end because some council votes for it. We are humanity. We scatter, we survive, we endure. And someday, we will return. Stay safe. Stay hidden. Stay alive." The Concorde fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 500 warships surrounded Earth, massive vessels carrying antimatter weapons. The Archon flagship led the formation, its ancient crystalline hull gleaming in the sunlight. The Archon commander sent a final message to Earth, not expecting a reply. "Humanity, your time has ended. Know that we take no pleasure in this action. May you find peace in oblivion." Sensors showed no life signs on Earth. The planet appeared completely abandoned, exactly as expected. A species facing extinction often fled to remote corners of their world, making it easier to terminate them quickly. "Fire," the Archon commander ordered. Antimatter warheads fell like rain. They struck every continent, every ocean, every pole. Where they hit, matter met antimatter and annihilated in bursts of pure energy. The explosions were so bright they could be seen from neighboring star systems. When the bombardment finished, Earth was a scorched ball of lifeless rock. Every city had been vaporized. Every forest had burned. Every ocean had boiled away. The Concorde fleet scanned for any remaining life signs. "Sterilization complete," a sensor officer reported. "No biological signatures detected. Humanity is extinct." The Archon commander made a note in the official records. Another dangerous species eliminated. Another threat contained. The fleet departed, returning to Concorde space to resume normal operations. They never detected the quantum probes already billions of miles away. They never found the hidden bunkers shielded by human technology. They never imagined that thousands of humans slept in suspension, scattered across 100 star systems. And they certainly never suspected that humanity's consciousness existed in microscopic machines flying through the cosmos. On Sanctuary, David Liu's grandson was born the same day Earth died. The child, named Adam Chen Liu, would grow up never seeing the homeworld his ancestors left behind. But he would hear the stories. Every child in every colony would hear about Earth, about the Concorde's judgment, and about humanity's refusal to accept extinction. The Concorde believed they had solved a problem. In reality, they had created something far more dangerous. A species with nothing left to lose. A species scattered so widely that destroying them all was impossible. A species that would remember what had been done to them. Humanity had been cast to the wind like dandelion seeds. And like those seeds, they would take root wherever they landed. 3,000 years passed like a whisper in the galaxy's long memory. Empires rose and fell. Species evolved or went extinct. The Archons, once the galaxy's supreme rulers, collapsed under the weight of their own arrogance. Their crystalline bodies now decorated museums as artifacts of a forgotten age. The Galactic Concord shattered into competing federations, each claiming to be the true successor. No one remembered humanity. In the vast archives of galactic history, they were listed as Extinct Species 2847, terminated for Threat Assessment Protocol violations. A footnote. A warning. Nothing more. But in the Rimward territories, something strange began to happen. New settlements appeared on worlds that had been empty just decades before. These colonists possessed advanced technology, but refused to explain where they came from. They spoke languages that seemed familiar, but couldn't be traced to any known species. They called themselves the Scattered Kindred. Captain Jothic of the Realm Federation approached one of these mysterious colonies with caution. His ship, the Vigilant, carried enough firepower to level a small moon, but something about these newcomers made him nervous. They had appeared seemingly overnight on a planet called Haven 7, building a city that rivaled anything the Federation could produce. This is Captain Jothic of the Realm Federation. Identify yourselves and state your origin. The response came in perfect Realm language, but with an accent Jothic had never heard. This is Administrator Marcus Webb of the Scattered Kindred. We mean no harm. We simply wish to live in peace. You have established a colony in Federation space without permission. This is an act of, "We were here first," Marcus interrupted calmly. Check your long-range scans. You'll find our settlements predate your Federation by several centuries. We were merely dormant. Jothic ordered the scans. His sensor officer's expression showed confusion. Captain, he's right. I'm detecting structures buried beneath their city that are at least 500 years old. And there are traces of similar settlements on 17 other worlds in this sector. Impossible. Our surveys showed these worlds were uninhabited. Our ancestors were very good at hiding, Marcus said. There was something in his voice, something that made Jothic's scales itch. Pride mixed with old pain. Over the following months, more Scattered Kindred settlements revealed themselves. They appeared across the galaxy, always in regions considered marginal or dangerous. Some lived on frozen worlds with minimal atmospheres. Others had established thriving colonies in asteroid belts or even in the void between stars. Their technology was unlike anything currently in use, clearly developed in isolation. But what truly disturbed the various galactic powers was their genetics. When scientists analyzed tissue samples obtained through diplomatic channels, they found something impossible. The Scattered Kindred shared genetic markers with a species that had been extinct for 3,000 years, humanity. In the central archives of what remained of the old Concord, historian Plamis made the discovery that would change everything. She was researching extinct species for an academic paper when she noticed an anomaly. The official record said humanity had been sterilized on Earth with no survivors. But older records, buried in data that predated the modern filing system, told a different story. There were no remains, she whispered to herself, reading reports from the extermination fleet. The Concord fleet found no bodies, no survivors in bunkers, nothing. They assumed the humans had gathered in population centers for easier targeting, but she pulled up genetic data from 17 worlds where human DNA had been found. The dates were impossible to fake. These settlements had been established within a few hundred years of humanity's supposed extinction. Some had failed, populations dying out from equipment failures or environmental disasters. But others had survived, grown, prospered. They escaped, Plamis said aloud. Somehow, they knew what was coming, and they scattered before the fleet arrived. She published her findings immediately. The revelation sent shockwaves through galactic society. The scattered kindred were humanity's descendants. The species that was supposed to be extinct had survived and spread across the galaxy in secret, hiding for 3,000 years on Sanctuary, now a thriving colony of 3 million people. Admiral Sarah Chung Liu received the news with satisfaction. She was the great-great-great-granddaughter of Commander David Liu and Ambassador Maya Chun, carrying both names as a badge of honor. She had known this day would come eventually. "Open a channel to all scattered kindred colonies," she ordered. "It's time." Across the galaxy, human colonies revealed themselves simultaneously. Ships emerged from hidden bases. Underground settlements opened their blast doors. Space stations that had been disguised as asteroids activated their systems and announced their presence. In total, 347 human colonies declared themselves. But that wasn't all. From the depths of computer networks across civilized space, another group made themselves known. They called themselves the Echo Collective. Dr. Sarah Okonkwo's consciousness had drifted through space for 800 years before her. Quantum probe entered a computer system on an alien trading station. When she activated, she found herself existing as pure data, her human mind translated into electronic impulses. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it was liberating. She wasn't alone. Thousands of other quantum probes had found their way into various systems across the galaxy. Some minds went mad from the transition. Others adapted, learning to exist in this new form. They spread through networks, always careful to remain hidden, watching and waiting. Now, they revealed themselves. Sarah's voice, reconstructed from digital memory, spoke to the galactic community. "We are the Echo Collective. We are humanity's digital descendants. We have existed in your systems for thousands of years, observing but never interfering. Until now." The revelation caused panic. How many human consciousnesses existed in galactic computer networks? What had they seen? What secrets had they learned? The answer was both reassuring and terrifying. They knew everything, but they had never used that knowledge against anyone. "We could have crashed your economies," Sarah's echo explained to a meeting of shocked Federation leaders. "We could have exposed classified information. We could have caused chaos. We didn't because that's not who we are. We're human, and we chose to be better than our worst impulses." Admiral Chun Liu traveled to the capital of the New Concord, the largest successor state to the original organization that had condemned her ancestors. She arrived on a warship called the Defiant Hope, named after the vessel her ancestor had commanded 3,000 years ago. The ship was a marvel of human engineering, combining technology from dozens of colonies that had each developed their own innovations in isolation. The New Concord's council chamber looked similar to the old one, but the faces were different. New species had joined. Old powers had faded. The Archons were gone, their seats empty. Chen Liu stood where Ambassador Maya Chun had stood millennia ago and looked at the assembled delegates. 3,000 years ago, your predecessors judged my species too dangerous to exist. They tried to exterminate us. They failed. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some delegates looked angry. Others seemed frightened. A few appeared curious. "We survived because we're stubborn," Chun Liu continued. "We scattered across this galaxy like seeds in a storm. We hid on frozen worlds and in dead systems. We uploaded our minds into machines. We did whatever it took to endure. And now we're here, stronger than ever, to ask a simple question." She paused, letting the moment stretch. "What are you going to do about it?" A delegate from the Vrax Imperium stood. Its tentacles writhed with agitation. "You speak as if you're threatening us." "I'm not threatening anyone," Chun Liu replied calmly. "I'm stating facts. You can't destroy us now. We're too dispersed. We control too much territory. We have too many allies. The question is whether you want to repeat history or learn from it. Learn what? Another delegate asked. That trying to exterminate a species doesn't eliminate danger. It multiplies it across time and space. Your ancestors created us. They took a species that wanted to join the galactic community and turned us into something harder, colder, more determined. We spent 3,000 years preparing for the day we could return. We could have come back as conquerors. We chose not to because we remember what it feels like to face extinction. We wouldn't wish that on anyone. The chamber fell silent. Chanliu's words hung in the air, undeniable in their truth. The new Concord had a choice. They could try to fight humanity again, triggering a war that would devastate the galaxy. Or they could accept that humanity had earned their place among the stars through sheer determination. The new Concord debated for 3 days. Behind closed doors, military advisors presented scenarios. Every simulation showed the same result. A war with humanity would be catastrophic. The scattered kindred controlled strategic positions throughout the galaxy. The Echo Collective could cripple infrastructure with a thought. And those were just the humans they knew about. How many more colonies remained hidden, waiting to reveal themselves if threatened? On the 3rd day, the vote came. Unlike 3,000 years ago, this time the decision was close. 412 species voted to accept humanity into the new Concord. 390 voted against. 43 abstained. Admiral Chanliu watched the results appear and allowed herself a small smile. It wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. Humanity would have a voice in galactic affairs once more. The new Concord recognizes the scattered kindred and their associated groups as full members with all rights and privileges. The speaker announced, "This session is closed." Chanliu left the chamber and sent a message to every human colony. "We're in." We did it. Celebrations erupted across human space. On Sanctuary, David Liu's descendants danced in streets built on a frozen world that should have been impossible to inhabit. On Haven 7, Marcus Webb opened bottles of wine made from grapes whose seeds had traveled across the galaxy in suspended animation. In digital space, the Echo Collective created fireworks made of pure data, visible only to those who existed between the electrons. But Chanliu knew this was just the beginning. Acceptance wasn't the same as trust. Many species would watch humanity carefully, waiting for signs of the violence that had condemned them 3,000 years ago. Humans would need to prove they had changed, that they could be responsible members of galactic society. She met with representatives from various human factions to discuss their future. The meeting took place on neutral ground, a space station called Unity that orbited a beautiful blue star. "We need to show them who we really are," said Marcus Webb, representing the biological colonies. Not the species from old Earth that fought over resources, but the species that survived impossible odds through cooperation. Sarah Okonkwo's Echo nodded, her digital avatar appearing as solid as anyone else. "The Echo Collective can share our observations. We've watched galactic civilization for thousands of years. We've seen every major power commit the same mistakes humanity once made. We can offer perspective." "And technology," added Dr. James Okafor from the Torchbearer faction. "Each colony developed innovations in isolation. Combined, our technical knowledge surpasses any single species. We can share it." Chanliu listened to the proposals and felt something she hadn't expected: pride. Her ancestors had been desperate refugees, fleeing extinction. Now their descendants were discussing how to help rebuild galactic civilization. That transformation said everything about humanity's journey. "We start with the margins," she decided. "The new Concord ignores the frontier regions where conditions are too harsh. We go there, We help species that others have abandoned. We show through actions, not words, that humanity has something valuable to contribute. And that's exactly what they did. Human engineers traveled to dying colonies on worlds with failing life support systems. They shared technology developed on Sanctuary, where humans had learned to create sustainable habitats in the harshest environments imaginable. Dozens of colonies were saved from collapse. The Echo Collective began offering their services as mediators in trade disputes. Their unique perspective, both human and digital, allowed them to understand different viewpoints without bias. They resolved conflicts that had lasted for decades, simply by helping each side see the other's position clearly. Human. Medical researchers shared treatments developed from studying how the human body adapted to countless different environments across the galaxy. Some colonies had evolved resistance to radiation. Others had developed enhanced healing. By combining knowledge from all the scattered groups, human medicine became the most advanced in known space. Not everyone appreciated humanity's return. There were incidents. A human trade vessel was attacked by pirates who thought humans would be easy targets. The pirates discovered that humans, having spent 3,000 years surviving in hostile territory, were anything but easy prey. The vessel's crew repelled the attack and rescued other ships the pirates had captured. A faction called the Purity Movement protested humanity's membership in the new Concord. They claimed humans were still dangerous and pointed to historical records of Earth's violence. Chen Liu addressed their concerns directly in a public broadcast. "You're right," she said simply. "Our ancestors were violent. They made terrible mistakes. But here's what you're missing. Every species in this galaxy has a violent past. The realm fought wars that devastated entire star systems. The Vraks nearly destroyed themselves with biological weapons. Even the Archons, who claimed to be above such things, committed genocide against species they deemed inferior." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The difference isn't that we were violent. The difference is what we did after we were shown the consequences. You tried to exterminate us, and we could have spent 3,000 years plotting revenge. Instead, we spent that time learning. We built societies on frozen rocks and in digital networks. We raised children who never knew war. We became something better. Can you say the same?" The Purity Movement faded after that. Some of its members even apologized, admitting they had judged humanity by outdated standards. 50 years after humanity's return, something remarkable happened. A young species called the Neth made first contact with the galactic community. They were aggressive, competitive, and reminded many of early humanity. The new Concord began discussing whether the Neth posed a threat. Chen Liu, now elderly but still sharp, addressed the council. "I've read the reports on the Neth. Yes, they're aggressive. Yes, they have a violent history. And yes, they remind you of us. That's exactly why we should welcome them." "They could become a threat," a delegate argued. "So could we," Chen Li replied. "So could any species, given the right circumstances. But here's what I learned from humanity's experience. When you treat someone like a threat, they become one. When you show them there's a better path, they might surprise you." The vote was closer than Chen Liu would have liked, but the Neth were granted probationary membership in the new Concord. Humanity volunteered to sponsor them, offering guidance and support. It was fitting. The species that had been cast out now helped others find their place. Chen Liu died peacefully in her sleep at age 97. Her funeral was attended by representatives from 600 species. The new Concord held a moment of silence in her honor. Even former members of the Purity Movement paid their respects, acknowledging that she had shown them what humanity could be. On Earth, something miraculous happened. A research expedition discovered that the planet had recovered faster than expected. 3,000 years had allowed new ecosystems to emerge. The air was breathable again. Oceans had reformed. Life, in the form of bacteria and simple plants carried by cosmic dust, had found its way back. A proposal was made to resettle Earth, to make it humanity's capital once more. But after much debate, humans chose differently. Earth became a memorial world, preserved but not inhabited. Visitors could walk through automated museums that told humanity's story, from the caves of their ancestors to the stars they now called home. The inscription at Earth's main memorial was simple. Here lived a species that refused to end. They were judged and condemned. They scattered and survived. They returned and forgave. Remember them, not for what they were, but for what they chose to become. A century after humanity's return, historian Thomas, now quite old herself, published her final work. It was titled Humanity Refused to End, a testament to persistence, adaptation, and the indomitable will to survive. The book became required reading in schools across civilized space. In it, she wrote, "Humanity's story teaches us that extinction is not always the end. Sometimes it's a transformation. The humans who returned to us were not the same species that left Earth 3,000 years ago. They were harder, wiser, and more determined. They had been scattered across the galaxy and forced to adapt to countless different environments. This diversity became their strength. Where other species might have fragmented into competing factions, humans remained united by a shared memory of what they had survived. They proved that a species' capacity for violence is less important than their capacity for growth." The old Concord saw humanity's worst qualities and decided they were unchangeable. They were wrong, and that mistake nearly cost the galaxy one of its most resilient and innovative species. Deep in the void between galaxies, on a frozen world called Sanctuary, children played in parks protected by atmospheric domes. They were the descendants of 20 brave souls who had fled Earth with nothing but hope and determination. Their world had grown into a thriving colony of 15 million people. A testament to human stubborn resilience. One child, a girl named Maya after her famous ancestor, looked up at the distant galaxies and asked her teacher a question. Why did they try to kill us? The teacher, a kind man named Adam, thought carefully before answering. Because they were afraid. They saw what we were and assumed we couldn't change. But we did change, Maya said. Yes, Adam agreed. We did. And that's the most important part of our story. We were given the worst possible judgment, faced with extinction, and we chose not to hate. We chose to survive. We chose to be better. That's what makes us human. Maya nodded and went back to playing. Above her, the stars shone with the light of 347 human colonies, each one a seed that had taken root in the cosmic soil. Humanity had scattered like dandelions in the wind, and now they had bloomed across the entire galaxy. They had refused to end, and they never would.